There comes a moment in many lives when the old fire goes out. You wake up one day and notice that the things which once pulled you forward, ambition, competition, applause, even fear, no longer work. You try to force motivation, but it feels hollow. You ask yourself, what's wrong with me? But what if nothing is wrong? What if the loss of motivation is not a failure, but a message? After a spiritual awakening, the psyche does not collapse, it reorganizes. And during that reorganization, the old engines of motivation are quietly dismantled. This is not the end of movement, it is the end of false movement. To understand why motivation disappears, we must look beneath habits, goals, and productivity into the deeper architecture of the soul. Before anything else, you have to understand this moment you are standing in right now, because what you are feeling is not weakness. It is not laziness. It is not you falling off. It is something much deeper than that. There was a version of you that used to wake up hungry. Hungry for validation, hungry for applause, hungry for proof that you mattered. You moved because somebody was watching. You pushed because you were afraid of being left behind. You stayed up late and ran on empty because the world promised you that one day all that suffering would mean something. That old drive felt real because everyone around you was running on the same fuel, status, title, money, likes, comparison. The scoreboard was clear and you knew how to play the game. And then something happened. Something shifted inside you. You started asking questions you never asked before. You started seeing through things that once hypnotized you. The applause got quieter. The trophies felt lighter. The goals that once kept you awake at night no longer scared you enough to move you in the morning. And suddenly you are standing still, wondering why you cannot push like you used to. You try to force it. You tell yourself to grind harder. You watch motivation videos. You repeat old mantras. But nothing catches fire. That is because the old fire was built on illusion. See, before awakening, you were not chasing your dream. You were chasing permission. You were chasing approval. You were chasing a sense of worth that was always outside of you. You wanted to be seen. You wanted to be respected. You wanted proof that you were enough. So you built a version of yourself that could survive in that world. A persona that knew how to perform, how to compete, how to impress. And that persona worked. It got results, it got rewards. But it was never the real you. It was a mask you learned to wear so you could belong. When awakening happens, the mask cracks. You start realizing that half the things you wanted were handed to you by culture, by family, by fear, by comparison. You realize that your definition of success was borrowed, that your goals were shaped by what made other people clap. And once you see that you cannot unsee it, the mind will not lie to itself again just to keep moving. The soul will not chase something it knows is empty. So motivation disappears not because you are broken, but because you are honest for the first time. Think about the high achiever who did everything right. Straight as, promotions, money in the bank, respect in the room. On paper they won. But they wake up one day with a heavy chest and a quiet panic. They made it, and yet they feel nothing. Research backs this up. External success without internal meaning often leads to anxiety, depression, and burnout. Why? Because the psyche knows when the destination is fake, and when the destination is fake, the body refuses to walk. You try to drag yourself forward, but something inside you locks up. That is not resistance. That is self-respect waking up. The old self that used fear to move you has lost its power. Fear of being ordinary no longer scares you. Fear of disappointing others no longer controls you. Fear of not being enough no longer works the way it used to. And when fear stops working, the old motivation system collapses. You are used to being chased by deadlines and expectations. Now there is silence. No whip, no threat, no pressure. And silence feels terrifying if you do not know what it is for. But that silence is not emptiness. It is space. It is the space where truth starts to speak. It is the space where the soul finally gets a voice after being drowned out for years. You are not unmotivated. You are uninterested in lying to yourself. You are uninterested in chasing something that no longer aligns. You are uninterested in proving yourself to people who do not know you. That old identity that survived on performance is tired. It carried you as far as it could. And now it is stepping aside, not because it failed, but because its job is done. This is why forcing motivation feels violent. You are trying to resurrect a version of yourself that no longer exists. You are trying to run on fuel your system no longer accepts. It is like pouring gasoline into a car that now runs on something else. Of course it will not move. Not because the car is broken, but because it has evolved. And here is the part most people miss. When the old self loses power, there is a gap, a phase where nothing seems to replace it right away. You are not driven by fear anymore, but you are not yet driven by purpose either. You are in between, and in between feels slow, heavy, directionless. People around you might call it lazy. They might tell you to snap out of it, to go back to how you were. But you cannot go back to sleep once you have woken up. This pause is not punishment. It is recalibration. Your system is rejecting borrowed desires. It is cleaning out false ambitions. It is stripping away goals that were never yours. And that process takes energy. That is why you feel tired. That is why you feel unmotivated. That is why even simple tasks feel heavier than they used to. You are not doing nothing. You are dismantling an entire identity. Integrity is expensive. It costs you old rewards, old praise, old momentum. But what you gain is alignment. And alignment moves differently. It does not rush. It does not scream. It does not beg for attention. It waits until the direction is true. You used to move because you were afraid of falling behind. Now you are standing still because you refuse to move in the wrong direction. That is growth, even if it does not look like it. That is strength, even if it does not feel like it. That is courage, even if nobody claps for it. The psyche refuses to move when the destination is no longer real. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. That is the deepest part of you saying, we will not trade our life force for something hollow anymore. We will not burn ourselves out for applause. We will not betray ourselves just to look successful. This moment is asking you to slow down and listen, not to hustle harder, not to manufacture motivation, but to let a new reason for moving emerge, one that is rooted in meaning, not fear, in truth, not performance, in alignment, not approval. The old self did its job. It got you here, but it cannot take you further. And that is okay. Let it rest, let it dissolve, because what comes next will not push you the way fear did. It will pull you quietly, steadily, from a place that feels solid instead of desperate. And when that motivation arrives, it will not exhaust you. It will not leave you empty at the finish line. It will feel clean. It will feel honest. It will feel like you are finally moving for yourself. When motivation disappears, most people panic and start blaming themselves. But what is really happening is not failure, it is exposure. Something deep inside you is standing up and saying, I have been ignored for too long. You used to move fast, stay busy, stay productive, stay distracted, because as long as you were doing, you did not have to feel. As long as you were chasing goals, you did not have to sit with the pain. As long as you were grinding, you did not have to listen to the quiet voice inside that kept saying something is wrong. Now the noise is gone, and what rises in the silence is everything you pushed away. The tiredness you never honored. The grief you never processed. The anger you swallowed to keep peace. The fear you buried so you could look strong. The vulnerability you locked away because the world taught you it was dangerous. These parts of you are not weak. They are not enemies. They are unpaid debts, and debts always come due. Before this shift, productivity was your hiding place. You stayed busy because slowing down meant feeling. You filled your schedule because empty space brought memories. You chased the next task because standing still made your chest heavy. So you told yourself you were disciplined. You told yourself you were ambitious. But deep down you were running. And now the escape door is closed. You try to work the same way you used to, but the body will not cooperate. You sit down to focus, and your mind drifts. You try to push through, and everything inside you resists. That is not because you lost discipline. That is because your system is done pretending the mind and body are connected. Psychology has shown this over and over again. Suppressed emotions do not disappear. They drain energy in the background. They create mental fatigue. They slow motivation. They show up as burnout and apathy and exhaustion that sleep cannot fix. You think you are tired because you are lazy, but you are tired because you are carrying emotional weight you never unpacked. Your psyche is speaking clearly now. It is saying you will not move forward until you look inward. You cannot outrun grief forever. You cannot silence anger forever. You cannot ignore fear forever. At some point, the soul pulls the emergency brake. This is why so many people lose motivation after major life events. A loss, a breakup, a realization, a trauma, a deep insight that changes how they see the world. They try to go back to normal, back to the old routines, back to the old drive. But normal does not work anymore, because normal was built on avoidance. You cannot unknow what you now know. Someone loses a loved one, and suddenly the grind feels meaningless. Someone goes through heartbreak and realizes how much of their strength was just survival mode. Someone hits a massive goal and still feels empty, and that emptiness forces questions they never wanted to ask. They try to push through it, but the psyche refuses, because pushing forward without integration would break them. So motivation shuts down as protection. This phase is not here to punish you. It is here to heal you. You are being asked to do the hardest work there is, not lifting more weight, not working more hours, not proving yourself again. You are being asked to feel, to sit with discomfort, to listen to parts of yourself you trained to ignore. That is not weakness. That is courage. Most people would rather stay busy their entire lives than face their inner world for 5 honest minutes. They would rather burn out than break down. They would rather numb than understand. But you are here because something in you is ready to integrate instead of escape. Integration means you stop fighting your shadow. It means you stop labeling parts of yourself as bad or unacceptable. It means you allow sadness without judging it. You allow anger without acting it out. You allow fear without letting it control you. You acknowledge pain without drowning in it. When these parts are ignored, they sabotage motivation. When they are acknowledged, they return energy. Think about it. How much power does it take to suppress emotion every day? How much focus does it cost to pretend you are fine? How much motivation is drained by carrying unresolved pain? When that energy is freed, motivation does not need to be forced. It flows naturally. But first the reckoning has to happen. This is why the drive does not come back right away. Because healing is slower than hustling. Feeling is slower than performing. Listening is slower than running. But it is also deeper. And deeper lasts longer. Right now you are not stuck. You are in dialogue with yourself. The lack of motivation is the signal. It is the body saying, stop using me to escape. It is the mind saying, stop numbing me with tasks. It is the soul saying, if you want real movement, you must make peace with what you have been avoiding. Once that happens, something shifts. The weight lifts slowly. The fog clears gradually. The energy returns quietly. Not as panic, not as pressure, not as fear-driven hustle, but as grounded strength. Motivation after integration feels different. It does not scream at you. It does not come from proving anything. It comes from alignment, from wholeness, from no longer fighting yourself. You move because it feels right. You act because it feels honest. You build because it feels meaningful. And when you rest, you do not feel guilty. When you slow down, you do not feel ashamed. When you say no, you do not feel afraid. That is power. So if motivation is gone, stop asking what is wrong with you. Start asking what part of you needs to be heard. Because once the shadow is acknowledged, it stops stealing your energy. Once the pain is integrated, it stops blocking your drive. You are not broken. You are becoming whole. And wholeness is the foundation of real unstoppable motivation. For a long time, fear was the engine. Fear woke you up in the morning. Fear pushed you out of bed. Fear kept you grinding when your body was tired and your mind was exhausted. You were afraid of failing, afraid of being average, afraid of watching other people pass you while you stayed the same, afraid of disappointing your family, your friends, your younger self. And that fear worked. It kept you sharp. It kept you moving. It kept you hungry. You did not always love the pressure, but you respected it because it got results. Then something changed. You started seeing fear for what it really was. You started noticing that no matter how much you achieved, the fear never went away. You reached one level and it just moved the goalpost. You proved yourself once and it demanded proof again. You impressed people and the approval faded faster than you expected. And one day you realized something that shook the foundation. You realized that if fear was the reason you moved, then you would never feel free. You would only feel chased. That realization weakens fear, not all at once, not dramatically, but slowly, quietly. Its voice gets softer. Its threats feel empty. You stop jumping every time it snaps its fingers. You stop believing that urgency equals importance. You stop believing that pressure equals purpose. And once fear loses its grip, it also loses its power to move you. That is when the silence shows up. No deadlines screaming in your head, no panic pushing you forward, No inner voice telling you are running out of time, just quiet. And that quiet can feel terrifying when you have lived your whole life being driven by fear. You are used to pressure. You are used to stress. You are used to feeling like if you stop for 1 second, everything will fall apart. So when the whip disappears, you do not feel peace right away. You feel lost. You feel unmotivated. You feel empty. You ask yourself, what is wrong with me? Why am I not hungry anymore? Why do I not feel the fire? But nothing is wrong. Your soul simply stopped responding to threats. Fear works on the surface of the mind. It activates survival. It floods the body with stress hormones. Neuroscience shows this clearly. Fear-based motivation